In today's video, I'm going to be breaking down the 10 biggest mistakes that I see people making on the carnivore diet that ruins their results. Now, these mistakes usually lead to people not feeling as energized as they could be, or not achieving the weight loss results that they're after. By the end of this video, you're going to know exactly what to do on the carnivore diet and what not to do, and I can virtually guarantee that you will achieve all your goals. Now, admittedly, some of these tips are going to be controversial, in particular the final one, so I'm sure a few people will disagree with the things I have to say in this video. However, in my experience on carnivore and the countless other people who I've also worked with on carnivore, this is what works. The first and most common mistake that I see people make is that they don't eat enough fat. You see, people are scared of fat because fat sounds a lot like fat. People think that if they eat fat, it will make them fat. This could not be further from the truth. Fat makes you feel full, and it's the building block for all of the hormones in our body. Humans never got fat until we started mass consuming things like sugars, other carbohydrates, these industrial oils, those sorts of things. Nobody ever got fat from eating animal fats. For fat to be absorbed, it requires something known as bile. Now, our bodies can only produce a certain amount of bile, and since we're not eating plants which contain things like fiber, which slows down our digestive system and gives our body more time to absorb all of this fat, even if you're eating an absurd amount of fat, your body can only absorb so much and it will just pass straight through you. Now, I'm not saying that you can have an unlimited amount of fat and not gain weight. However, if you do have low energy on carnivore, you want to up your fat intake. The second most common reason for people having low energy on the carnivore diet is that they're not having enough salt. On a low carbohydrate diet, your kidneys excrete more electrolyte, and salt is a combination of two electrolytes, sodium and chloride. What a lot of people seem to forget is the processed food that they used to eat contained a lot of salt. So what people will do is they'll cut out this processed food and cut out all the salt that comes along with it. And then because they're on carnivore, they also go into a low carbohydrate state. And then they'll still put the same amount of salt on their food as they normally would. Without enough salt, your body's not going to function properly and you're not going to feel your best. You need to put enough salt on. As Dr. Chafee says, add as much salt as tastes good. What happens is over time your body adjusts and you find yourself having less and less salt. Our bodies are incredibly intelligent, but at the start of the carnivore diet, you want to put way more salt on your meat than you usually would. If you're on carnivore and you don't have seemingly unlimited energy, the first two things you need to do is up your fat and up your salt. The third mistake that some people make on carnivore is that they don't read the ingredients of the things they're buying, and all these sneaky ingredients end up in their diets. Often people will buy things that they think are carnivore, like beef jerky, bacon, even sausages, and they won't check the back of the packets. Often these things are just filled with additives. Sometimes you'll even find these things are only like 70% meat. It's genuinely unbelievable how they can make these things 30% additives without anybody noticing it. Salt's another one of these things. You would think that salt would only contain salt. However, there's often things in salts like anti-caking agents to make sure that the salt grains don't stick together. So make sure that you're checking your ingredients thoroughly. The next mistake that people make is that they're including spices on their foods. Now, I know when you go from a standard diet with plenty of variety to a meat-only diet, it can sound pretty daunting and you want to add flavor to your meat. However, when you don't have the stuff, your taste buds change over time. Seriously, to me now, a steak has so much flavor, it's unbelievable. I have no need to put seasonings on it because every time I take a bite, the amount of flavor it gives me is just incredible. And there's a very interesting paradox that you will experience if you continue to include these things on your meat, in that you actually have more chance of getting sick of the meat you're eating. Whereas if you only put salt on your meat, you'll end up never getting sick of it. I broke this down in the video I made the other day, so I'll play the clip from that, which explains exactly why this happens. So, why do we get sick of eating a food? When you think about it from a surface level perspective, it doesn't really make much sense that when we eat the exact same thing for multiple days in a row, that after we have it multiple times, we start to enjoy it less and less. Now, the reason for this is because toxins like the defense chemicals in these foods start building up over time. Now, let's look at an example of almond butter on toast. Let's say you had that for breakfast every single morning for a month. Why is it that after a month you start getting sick of it? One of the defense chemicals in almonds is literally cyanide, which has been used throughout history by assassins to poison people. So what happens is over time, as you eat more and more almond butter, more and more of the cyanide is going to accumulate in your body. And after enough times of being poisoned, your body's going to be like, whoa, 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 stop that. We don't want any more of the stuff. So it's going to send you a negative feedback mechanism in the sense that it's no longer going to taste as good. Now this applies to literally any food, even if you're just eating the toast by itself. Because wheat contains lectins, over time the lectins would build up, and so you'd start to get this negative feedback mechanism as well. Now because of this is why lots of people think that they want a diet with lots of variety. You often hear people say things like, oh, I could never do the carnivore diet, I like to have variety in my diet.
It's like, yeah, of course, your body's being poisoned and it wants to eat something different. Of course, you can't eat the same thing over and over when it's gradually tasting worse because your body wants you to stop eating it. Think about it. If you could eat your favorite food every single meal and never get sick of it, so that every single time you ate it, it tasted as good as it ever has, you would no longer have this desire for variety. How do we never get sick of eating something? It's very simple. You just eat fatty meat. When you start to eat this fatty meat over and over again, your body's quickly going to realize that there's no toxins in it. It has every single nutrient you need in the perfect quantities, and that you just feel amazing in general after eating it. And so because you're not getting this build-up in toxins like you would if you're eating some sort of plant, you're never going to get sick of it. Seriously, after a week or two, your taste buds will adjust massively, and meat will just have so much flavor you won't want anything else. The next mistake that people make is that they compare their results to others. People will see that their friend Jenny has gone on carnivore and lost 10 pounds in her first 2 weeks. However, everyone's bodies are different. A lot of people who are on the standard American diet before they went on carnivore have a lot of inflammation. Every cell in their body is decimated and their bodies need to heal. As well as the fact that many people are incredibly deficient in many nutrients before they start carnivore. So what happens is they go on carnivore and their taste buds are exposed to this nutrient-dense food. And so what happens is their bodies just want to keep eating the stuff. Some people when they first go on carnivore, because of this, end up gaining weight. An interesting example of this is Steak and Butter Gal, who when she first went on the carnivore diet, she ended up gaining like 30 pounds pretty quickly. Now she's lost all of it, but the reason for this is that she was a vegan for a long time beforehand, so her body needed a lot of meat so it could regulate all of its nutrient levels to where they need to be. Over a long enough time horizon, when you eat the proper human diet, you will look exactly how a human's meant to look. Every single species that eats its species appropriate diet does not get fat, does not get sick. Assuming you're not eating an absurd amount of dairy or something like that, all you need to do is give it time and trust the process. The next mistake that some people make is that they start off too strict. You'll often hear carnivore YouTubers, including myself, talk about how ruminant meat is the best type of meat. And this is completely true. It's the most nutrient-dense type of meat. And because their digestive systems are so complex, it means that no matter what they're fed, they're able to break it down and it ends up in them having zero toxins in their meat. However, when you start the carnivore diet, if you're used to eating a diet with a lot of variety, it can make it very hard to stick to at the start if you're only eating one thing. So make sure you include whatever meats you want. If you want chicken, have chicken. If you want ostrich eggs, have ostrich eggs. If you're feeling like a steak, have a steak. It's completely up to you. What you will find, however, is that over time, as your body gets more and more rewarded for eating this ruminant meat, because like I said, it contains the most nutrients and it has the least toxins in it, and it will just make you feel amazing in general, is your body will recognize that it's doing this to it, and you'll start to crave it more. Most people find that after a few months on carnivore, the only type of meat they want to eat is ruminant meat. However, at the start, let yourself eat whatever you want. The next mistake people make is that they quit too early. When you first go on the carnivore diet, your body needs to make a lot of changes. For one, you're changing your primary fuel source from carbohydrates to fats. Your gut microbiome is going to change entirely, simply because it's curated based on exactly what you eat. So if you completely change your diet, your gut microbiome is going to change drastically. Now these things take time to adjust to. So if in your first couple of weeks your energy levels are a bit meh and you have some stomach issues, all you need to do is give it time. Over time these things will resolve themselves and you'll feel incredible. The next thing you want to make sure you avoid is boredom eating. Carnivore diet is one of the only diets in the world where you can achieve the body of your dreams without being hungry once. However, if you're one of those people who just eats every single time they get bored, it will halt your weight loss. The very simple philosophy on the carnivore diet is if you're hungry, eat a big meal till you're comfortably stuffed. As long as you're doing that, you'll notice that the pounds come off. However, if every time you get remotely bored, you sit down and have a massive meal, it may halt things. The next mistake people make is that they take supplements. Every single nutrient you need in the perfect amount is available in meat, including vitamin C. It's because when you're in a low carbohydrate state, you need a lot less vitamin C. Vitamin C and glucose, which carbohydrates break down to, have a very similar molecular structure, so they compete for the same receptors. So like I said, when you're in this low carbohydrate state, you need a lot less of it, and in meat there is plenty. Often I'll have people ask me if they should continue supplementing with some random pill. Why? Most of these vitamin supplements come from plants, so they have poor bioavailability. We literally cannot break it down. Not to mention the fact that the cases these things are made in are just filled with garbage ingredients. Meat is nature's multivitamin. As long as you're eating enough meat, it gives you every single thing you need. The only thing you should even think about supplementing with is electrolytes. But for most people, as long as you're having enough salt, you don't need to supplement with electrolytes.
On Carnivore, I work out for about 3 hours a day, simply because I just love it. It makes me feel amazing. I sweat an absurd amount, and I never get cramps. For the vast majority of people, meat, salt, water is all you need. The final mistake I see people make is that they get caught in this primal meat and fruit lifestyle. Humans ate a lot less fruit over time than you think they did. For one, we had the Ice Age, where from about 2.5 million years ago to 12,000 years ago, the majority of the planet was frozen over and we couldn't access the plants because they were frozen. As well as the fact that when we look at something known as the nitrogen 15 ratings in our fossils, we have very, very high ratings, higher than every other species on the planet. Now, what this indicates is that the more carnivorous a species is, the higher this rating is. If we're eating an absurd amount of fruit, like 300 grams of sugar per day, like some people advocate for, there is no way this rating would be that high. Not to mention the fact that fruit is not real anymore. I made an entire video on this topic yesterday, but ever since we've started farming about 12,000 years ago, when the Ice Age finished, we've been crossbreeding our plants so they can get more of these favorable traits. Fruit nowadays is just so sweet, not in its natural levels like it was before we started messing around with this stuff. I've heard Kerry from Homestead Hell refer to fruit as genetically modified candy at this point, and I completely agree. And to make matters worse, in recent years, we've even started doing this stuff in labs. Literally, scientists will get a fruit, copy one of its genes, and paste it into another fruit. So they get more of these desirable traits, they become sweeter, and become more pest resistant. And when something is more pest resistant, it just means it's more defended. So it's going to contain more of these defense chemicals that we don't want. If you saw your favorite fruit in its original form, you wouldn't even recognize the stuff. Now, a meat and fruit diet is obviously a lot better than the standard American diet, but the optimal, true, primal, proper human diet is a carnivore diet. Anyway, that concludes the 10 biggest mistakes that I see people making on the carnivore diet. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more of my content, consider subscribing down below. It's completely free, it means you'll see more videos like this. Now in this video I touched on a lot of topics at a surface level, so if you're interested in going into more depth on any of these topics, I have a few videos up on screen that I think you might like. As always, thank you guys very much for watching and I'll see you next time.